This beautiful lady was named Debbie Lynn Axley. She was my mom. And today, we're going to talk about her. Because it's September 26th. And that was her birthday. Hold on. Who wore it best? I think she wore it best. I'm biased. It's also still mid-90s in this godforsaken hell. So we're not actually gonna keep the leather jacket on. Hi, everybody. This is my mom. I want to talk about her today because I feel like that's the best way to handle my grief right now. And it's silly. I suppose it's not silly. And it is silly because my mom has been dead for almost a decade at this point. Like, no cell in my body as it exists now has ever encountered my mother, which is very sad to think about. But if she would have made it to today, she would have been 70. That is amazing. So I think the best way to handle my grief at this moment is just to talk about her. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her life, about the stories that I've heard from other people that knew her, from family members, friends, her own recollections of her life. And because I am just a human person, I'm also going to be talking about like how a lot of my experiences in life absolutely mirror hers, which is really frightening. I am your daughter, after all. In every sense of the word, I am her daughter, even though I'm adopted, which we'll talk about a little bit. I, Alana Marie Axley, am Deborah Lynn Axley's daughter through and through. So, we should probably start at the beginning. My mom was born in Pennsylvania. Where in Pennsylvania? I don't fucking know. But she was born in Pennsylvania. To my grandma, Joyce. Grandma Joyce. Or was it Grandma Jean? Shit, I have a Grandma Joyce and a Grandma Jean. Both of them have transcended to the afterlife. Jean, it was Grandma Jean. Jean Purcell. But my mom's birth name was Dryer, like the ice cream. So at some point between the many gentlemen that my grandma brought into my mother's life, she landed on Dryer. And she made it from Pennsylvania somehow to here in Southern California, where I have grown up as well. And I've recently moved back to as well. Where I think there's a lot of places, there's a lot of movement, but she ultimately graduated from, sorry, I'm trying to sit up straight because my posture's terrible and I can hear her telling me, sit up straight. I think somewhere in Carson is where she graduated from high school. And there was a lot of life, as you might be able to tell, between birth and graduation from high school, because my mom had type 1 diabetes. I say it the way she said it. And she developed that at age 7, which was a really difficult fucking thing to exist with in, any time of history, but especially, my mom was born 54. So she was not necessarily living through the golden age of American medicine. I don't think there is a golden age of American medicine, but we're not going to get into that today. But she lived with having type 1 diabetes for all of her life. And she did a pretty fucking good job through it. It's funny, we still have a few of these hanging around because obviously we're not going to get rid of them, but it's for her insulin, little freezer packs for when she needed to go places out in the world. I don't know much about like my mom's dreams about what she wanted for life, what she wanted to do, if she wanted to do anything other than she wanted to be a mom. She did a little bit of schooling for like college, I think here locally in the area where I live in at the edge of LA County. And she didn't get super far in college. I think she got swept up in relationships and things of that nature before she met my adoptive father. Both her and my father adopted me a little later in the story, but we'll get there. She had a couple of missteps, which I get you, Mom. I think it was her second husband is the reason why she had to go buy a pew pew. I believe his name was Peter. But when my mom and my dad met each other, she was working at Bob's Big Boy. And I always wanted to go to Bob's Big Boy, but they didn't exist by the time I was sentient enough to, be eating at asking to go to Bob's Big Boy. But I think they met when my mom was in her like early to mid 30s. So, I'm 31, so she was around my age. And that's when I have most of my stories from my mom and what she was doing with life, which is a shame because there's like a big gap that I have really no knowledge about what in the world was happening and what did happen. But I know my mom and dad met each other. They might have gotten hitched. I don't know. My dad doesn't really remember stories at this point. He's too busy drowning in liquor and cannabis. But from the stories that I have heard from some family members and my mom's best friend, along with some of the love notes that I've found when I had to clean out her stuff when she died, they had a bit of a whirlwind romance and got hitched out in Reno, Nevada, and settled back down here at the edge of LA County in the desert. Now, I think my mom got to do a little bit of traveling, which is nice. I've never really been anywhere, and it's my goal to go do things. But my mom and dad, I know for a fact, went to Hawaii many times. I think they even got to like go to Disney World at some point, which sounds really fun to me. Through life, I would like to do a lot of things that you guys got to do at some point. But there was some travel here and there. But I know for a fact that my mom really just wanted to have kids. My mom wanted to be a mom. And I have so much empathy and so much love for her and for my dad in that regard, because my mom lost 4 children through the process of trying to have kids. And I cannot even imagine that pain. And I'm not at the point even to where I can worry about that. I want to have kids so very much. But you have to have a partner to have kids. And that's nowhere near my radar right now. And hasn't been for a couple of years. But they tried and they tried and they tried and they tried. And because of the diabetes, there's something to do with the Rh factor in her blood. She was never able to fully carry. And so that is when they started to look into adopting. Now, my mom was like so strong because I was very curious about the whole process when I was younger. And I suppose my entire life I was curious about my own adoption because I was two when that happened. So I had, already gone through some pretty big milestones. And I have only love for my birth mother. Her name was Erin Mary Ray. I was born Alana Marie Ray. And when I have little girls, because I know for a fact, gender aside, I'm gonna have a couple of girls. I'd like their middle names to be like Maria and Mare, and just keep that familial tradition going because it sounds fun. But I don't know much about my life before I was adopted. I don't think it was kind. I don't think it was good. I'm very grateful for the life I was brought into, for sure. Even though there were a lot of ups and downs, there was a lot of negatives, there was a lot of trauma. I'm trying not to deify also my mother. It's hard not to put your dead parent on a pedestal, for sure. Because I died when my mom, well, I also died when my mother died, for sure. I was 21. And so, you know, the girl, you know, the child part of me absolutely died when I watched my mom die, and I held her as she died, for sure. So that all still somehow brings me back to the matter of being her child, which was really, really nice. My mom taught me a lot of important things that I then also had to refine as an adult. So unconditional love, I learned that from her, for sure. The rusty side of that penny, for sure, is unconditional love without boundaries, which I have had to learn the very hard way. But you do it. I did it. My boundaries, I wish I could tell you, Mom. Debbie, you would be so impressed. I have a cat. I have a thought and I have a cat. Come on. I know. I also have a younger sibling that my mom and my dad adopted, and his adoption experience was so difficult for all of us because it became an absolute clustercuss. Not that I would give up my younger sibling for anything in the world. I would not. I would commit horrible crimes for him, unfortunately, as one does, you know. But it completely destroyed dealing with the state and your children. Destroyed my mom, for sure, and my dad to a certain extent. After that happened, it was only a couple years before the stressors of all of it broke down my poor parents' marriage. And this is the part where my mind wants to deify her memory, but also so much horrible things occurred that I wish my mother would have been in control of. And I don't blame her for it, but, you know, it's hard. My mom brought a man into the house after my parents were divorced. And that man was an abuser to me and to her. And I'm sure as shit to his actual daughter, who had long since cut ties with him. And I am so proud of her for that. But be that as it may, there was still a lot of goodness in that. Let's talk about some of the fun things I used to do with my mom. Because we were kind of like at that edge of, you know, mother-daughter arguing, screaming at each other all the time post-divorce, you know. So from age 13 all the way to 21, it was rough. But I have always loved music and I've always loved art. And so one of the things, my mom was super not cool with me doing art for a living. And I still don't, I still really don't do it for a living, even though I'd love to. But my mom loved music. She loved Eric Clapton. She loved, is it Daughtry? I don't know. She loved Phil Collins. And so one of the things that she used to do when cell phones came around, one of my favorite songs is still Clocks by Coldplay. So she would text me, "Your song's on! Don't answer your phone." So she would call my phone and I would let it go to voicemail so that, you know, my favorite part of Clocks would play, which is the chorus. And that was really wonderful. And she did that too with a Paramore song that we used to sing to each other all the time. And I can't remember the name of it right now. How does it go? Don't go crying to your mama, 'cause you're on your own. Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? She used to do that for Ain't It Fun too. Oh, you're so funny. My mom is someone that I really wish was still alive today, because now that I am older and I have my autism diagnosis and my ADHD diagnosis, I have a good feeling that my mom was also autistic, just in like a different way. I want to be able to like talk to her about that, because she would do something that I would consider like oral stimming. Like, one of the reasons why I love to like sing, even though she was not cool with me singing in the house. Like, her and my ex-wife vehemently told me to shut up all the time when it came to singing. How well has that worked for you now, mother? But she used to make these sounds all the time, for happy, for sad, for disgust, and just, you know, to be silly. So I don't know, I'm thinking about that right now. It just made me laugh. Oh, let me see. What are some of the things that you loved? Christmas. My mom loved Christmas. Did the entire house up with baubles and I can't think of things that start with a B for alliteration purposes. But you know, the mini Christmas village, and she used to get like these little tiny bulbs that she would hang from string in the fucking entryway of the house, so that the door would always fucking hit them and they would hit the ground and they would break into a million pieces. And it was the one time of the year when we had to have grandma over. Now, her and her mother did not have a good relationship, and that's for good reason. My grandmother on my mother's side, I'm sorry, Grandma, but you were evil. She's not a good person, not kind. Said horrible things that I'm not even gonna verbalize them. But she knows. And so it was the one day of the year when we had to have grandma over. And because of my mom's diabetes, she tried very hard to not drink, to not overdo it with sweets. She had to give up cigarettes, which were like her 3 favorite things in the world. And like, Mom, I get it, you know, I don't drink anymore, I don't smoke anymore, but I certainly miss cigarettes. But we had to have grandma over every year. And so that was the one day of the entire year when my mom let herself have at least one glass of wine. And it was always nice to meet Drunk Debbie, because I didn't get to see Drunk Debbie much in my life, but let me tell you, she was fun. She was fun. Oh, what else, Mom? Disneyland. Yeah. I loved Disneyland too. So Disney, as a larger corporation, I'm going to try not to talk about a lot right now because we're talking about my mom. But it's hard to reconcile something that honestly is so important to me, but is in actuality so cruel to the society it performs within, which we won't get super into right now. But my mom and my dad and me and my younger sibling adore Disneyland. When the economy was better, you know, 20 something years ago, and my dad had a decent job, we would go to Disneyland a couple of times a year. I used to dream of being a part of Club 33 and doing all of that. But we used to go all the time, and that was one of our favorite things in the world to do, was go to Disneyland. I used to get so excited about going to Disneyland when I was little that we had to call it the Worm Farm. And that only worked for like a year because I used to stay up all night when I knew we were going to go to Disneyland. And so I think my mom came up with the Worm Farm for that drive down to Anaheim. It's hard going through so many milestones of my life without my mom that I thought I would be able to do with my mom. Like, even though I am so happy to be divorced, I wanted more than anything for my mom to be there on my wedding day. And even though I'm gonna have kids one of these days. I'm gonna meet a really nice guy and I'm gonna have kids. I wish she could be here to be a part of that. Like, I totally get it. It's just how life is. This is what we decided to do when our souls came down here, but it's like not fair. But I guess that's not the point. I guess the point is that I really enjoyed having her here while I had her here. Even though we fought like cats and dogs and I really offended her and she really offended me, and we knew how to stab each other right in the places where it hurt. I think our last couple days together were really, really nice for like the bittersweet experiences that they were. Okay, well, I'll talk about it. So, the timeline for when my mom died on May 26th of 2015 is like this. She died on a Tuesday. We spent the day together on Saturday beforehand, and this is what happened. At this point, my mother's abusive boyfriend was living with us. He was physically abusive to her and emotionally and financially abusive to her. He was sexually abusive to me. We're not going to get into it. But he came home at 2 p.m., drunk as usual, from the bar he liked to hang out at. And thank God she was there to witness it, because he came home and he slapped my ass. And I don't even remember what she said. I just remember telling him, "Don't you ever put a goddamn hand on me ever again." And thank God she was there to witness it. And we decided, you know what, let's just go shopping. Let's not even be home. Let's just leave. And so my mom and I just spent the afternoon at the mall, which was really nice. We went to Pier 1 Imports, which doesn't even exist anymore. And we went to go look at like the fucking baskets for storage for her mother, because grandma needed something for her little condo that she lived in. And then we came home. The boyfriend made dinner to try and make up for his existence. I'm not being kind to him because I don't have to be. I don't even think he's on this earth anymore, and that's for the safety of every other young girl that exists, and I'm grateful for it. But we all ate and had dinner. And then Sunday morning came the next day, and Mom and I weren't feeling well. And I figured he just did something with the food to fuck around with it because he was angry at me for speaking up. But Mom had to suffer, and so I felt so bad. So her and I just laid in bed on Sunday, and we just, I don't know, what is it called nowadays? Bed rotting? We just bed rot because we didn't feel good. Sunday night, I started to feel better, and my mom did not. And it got to a point during Sunday where her blood sugar was acting weird. And so we ended up going to the hospital. We went in, actually no, first we just went to I'm trying not to like use names of anything because I know all of my stalkers know where I am, but the whole world doesn't need to know. So we went to a local medical group, which I 100% blame for her passing, but that's not how litigation works. You know, after a year, if you don't bring a case, you can't do anything for negligence. So they kept her overnight. Oh no, they didn't. Did they? Yes, they did. They kept her overnight. And then Monday happened. And because my mom was in the hospital, I decided not to drive to Bakersfield, where I was going to school at the time, in undergrad, because this was May 2015, and so I was about a month from being done with undergrad. And so I didn't go in on Monday, even though I really wanted to. I didn't go in because I was worried. So Monday afternoon, she wasn't really getting better, so when I went to visit her at the medical group, they had actually just called an ambulance because they didn't know why her blood sugar wasn't responding and she was feeling funny still. So I got to go in the front of the ambulance. From the medical group to the hospital with her, and they checked her in, and she, was fine. So Monday turned into Tuesday, and this is the part where I have to have a lot of, forgiveness for myself. Because a little voice in the back of my head said, you should go and visit your mom before you drive up to school. But I was so impatient to go and make art. I was doing my bachelor's in visual arts, and so I wanted to go throw on the wheel. I wanted to go make ceramics so very badly. And so I didn't listen to the voice in my head, and I went to school that day. I drove to school. It was about 90 miles from where I am. And I missed about 7 calls from my dad and from my younger sibling. And they said Mom had stopped breathing, and they were doing everything in their power, but I needed to get home immediately. Now, it's 90 miles from there to here. Usually takes me an hour and a half. And you can use your imagination as to how it happened, but I got home in about 30 minutes. And I give that grace all to the divine for getting me home. Because if my mom was still there when I got there, it was only by a thread. And I watched the rest of the process of them breaking my mother, her rib cage and her everything to try and keep her here with us. And I knew for a fact she was gone. But then I became the matriarch of the family. I did not choose those words. One of my mom's younger brothers came, after everything had occurred, after we had finally pulled all the tubes out and Code Blue had stopped and everyone had gone about their day. And just my mom's body in the bed and all of us around her crying. And I'm 21 and I have just been told that I'm the one that has to sign the body away to the morgue, And my uncle comes in and he says, there lies on the bed our old matriarch, and here sitting in front of us all is the new. And in that moment, I had no ability for cognition, but now me looking back on it, I can just be like, what the fuck was wrong with you, dude? My mom was so beautiful, and it's, I think, a blessing that I can't remember what she looked like the last time I saw her. Grief has completely clouded over that memory, as well as all of the weed and all of the liquor that I consumed between that time and now. But my mom wanted certain things to happen after she died. And so I did those things. First of all, she didn't write a will. Mother, if you haven't written a will and you're in the state of California, you are able to create a holographic will. Google it. I'm not giving you legal advice. Just because I'm an attorney, I don't have a license to practice right now, and that's a different day. But the one thing she really did want to have happen is she wanted to be cremated. She wanted to be put in the ocean. I did those things. I mean, I didn't personally cremate her. I did have to pick her up after that happened, and she lived in a box for a while. And then I put her in the ocean. And I don't know why I'm laughing. I think it's just because it's ridiculous. Oh God. Ugh. But I think that's the only thing that I can do at this point, is just laugh. Because my mom's gone. And I'll never be able to have her hold my children, and I'll never be able to buy a house for her, or give her a new car, or, I don't know, take her to Fiji. I don't even think she even wanted to go to Fiji, but I think, like me, she just had a taste for the wind and she wanted to see the world. And I wish I could have given her that. And that's okay. I don't know, is there anything else you want to add? She looks great. This photo was taken a year after I was born. Actually, if you look at the back of this poor broken picture frame, you can actually see her beautiful handwriting. My handwriting is not nearly this pretty. I don't know if you can even read it. I don't know if it's gonna focus. But this must have been for my grandma, because it says, "To my favorite mom from your favorite daughter. Love you, Debbie." 1994. And it sucks growing up because everyone that you love dies. But that's also like the way of it. That's how it's supposed to be. I would much rather me be the one grieving over my mother than my mother being the one grieving over me. I am very grateful for that. It's not gonna fucking close, and that's fine. Okay, thank you. I wish I had more stories. I wish I knew more about my mother. I do have one really silly story. And I don't know if it's silly good or silly weird. But my mom was a part of a commune at the start of the 80s. Late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there. And this is like a commune where they were praying so hard that they told her she could stop taking her insulin. It was that kind of a commune. Which is why she ultimately escaped and I think got that pew-pew. But she recollected telling me about the men of the commune going and killing a moose. And she had to cook the moose heart and it was beating in the pan. And this is the part where I'm like, Mom, really? Did that really happen? And I have so few stories about her that it's just one of my more ridiculous things that I like to think about. She was a huge romantic. I used to think I wasn't a romantic, and then something happened when I turned 30, and now I'm like, oh my god, Mr. Darcy. I'll watch all the fucking romance shit, and I'll read romance novels, and it'll be great. And it's a nice life. But she was a huge romantic, and she, admittedly, good reason or not reason, she wanted to be the pastor's wife. As a little anarchist myself, I don't know if I would ever go that far. If anything, I'd probably be burned at the stake if it was legal. Oh, that was her laugh, by the way. That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing. I don't remember my mom's voice. I wish I did. Sometimes I will say things and I know that that's like her and that's like what she sounded like, but I cannot remember her voice like on call in my memory. And I don't know if that's just a trauma response, and I don't know if that's just grief, but it is a very hard part of all this is I don't remember her voice. I had a video file once on, I think it might even be my old computer, that had her speaking for 5 seconds, and I cherished it. But I don't remember her voice, and that's hard. If you're still here watching this video, good for you. I'm just putting this out there in the world for everyone that has lost their parent and has a unique relationship with them and doesn't know how to coagulate the grief into something useful. Because I can scream songs and I can paint pictures all damn day, but that doesn't negate the fact that I will always carry a little bit of grief from watching my mom die. Maybe it's just the shared experience with other people that have lost their parents. And to be clear, 21 isn't super young to lose a parent, but it was fucking young enough, man. It was young enough. Especially because it was not a good experience for me being very, very young to be adopted. I haven't gone into it, but my mom certainly dealt with an extremely traumatized child when I was adopted. Losing my birth mother was not kind to me. And so then losing my adoptive mother, who I view as my mother, was super not kind to me, psychologically wise. Which is why we're still talking about her. 10 years after the fact, almost 10 years. In May it'll be 10 years. But my mom made it to 60. And you know what? That's really fucking impressive for a lady with type 1 diabetes from when she was 7. My mom had both of her feet when she died. She had both of her hands. Her eyes worked. If you know anything about long-term people living with diabetes type 1, you'll know that those are some pretty impressive stats. So I should probably wrap up this video. So I'm gonna leave you with this. It hadn't happened at this point because my mom had just turned 40 when she was photographed for this glamour shot. But my mom had cataract surgery in both of her eyes. And so for anyone who knows anyone that has had cataract surgery, when the light hits it at a specific angle, your eye just twinkles. And so I used to call my mom Double Twinklies because she had the twinkles in both of her eyes. And she was just so beautiful. Why wouldn't I call her Double Twinklies? So, here's for you, Deb. I made it to 31, even though I super didn't want to many times in my life. And I will make it to 91. Maybe even 101. We'll see. We'll see where life takes me. So, if you have a good relationship with your mom, and only if you have a good relationship with your mom, I fully understand that there's people that don't have good relationships with their parents. Trust me, I know. Give your mom a kiss today. Tell her that you love her. Ask her about the dumbest thing she did when she was 22, and you will get a story. Oh, I'm gonna tell one more story. I'm gonna tell one more story because I just remembered it. we talked about Disneyland a little bit. And my parents have been going to Disney I think both of my parents went the years that they were born and Disneyland opened respectively. So like 1954 is when both my parents were born. And I think both of their parents, like, no, that was just my dad. My mom was in Pennsylvania. Just my dad went the year he was born. Be that as it may. My mom and dad went to Disney back when they were still doing drugs together. And so my mom just wouldn't eat the edible before she went into Disneyland, like proper. And so my mom and dad got caught. And if you know anything about the wonderful world of the mouse, you know that underneath the park there is a catacomb of shit. And so my mom and dad were held at the jail in Disneyland. And I don't know how long they were there. I don't think it was really long. But they were in Disney jail for bringing drugs into the park because my mom just wouldn't fucking eat the edible before she got in to the gates. This is dissimilar from the time when my mom and dad were down in Mexico and they almost got arrested for stuff. For doing. I won't go into it because this is YouTube. I don't need to say certain words and get in trouble, but that's the mom I wish I knew. Not the hyper-stressed one that died from a heart attack and hypertension. That's the mom I wish I knew. So go ask your parents about their stories of getting arrested and about using drugs in the 80s. I'm sure you will have a fun laugh after all of it. So I'm gonna give you another good look at her, send you off so I can stop the recording and make it look fluid. I'm Alana. This is my mom, Debbie. And from us to you. Oh, should we show them the thing you used to do? Yeah. So she always used to do this. I love you. So I'm gonna do it to you and you can learn to do this for everyone that you love, okay? I love you. Have a beautiful rest of today. Have a beautiful tomorrow. And just enjoy it. Take a lot of pictures. Because someday your children are gonna just be crying over them. Because that's the one thing that they've got left. So you tell them, Debbie. You tell them. Bye.